Okay, so let's do New York. We'll first, before they do the introductions, I want to say that and all you guys are great. All you guys are great. But Bob Knakal, man. Bob Knakal. I know people are going to see this video. Bob Knakal literally is the top commercial real estate broker in New York City, but what, outer areas or just primarily New York? New York City. I mean, top commercial. If you want to know why something happened with a building, you've been doing this, what, 30 years?
41 years.
41 years. Yeah, it was count. Like this guy, he knows all the players. They're in his cell phone. They call him. He has war stories that he cannot talk about, but he has seen it from the inside out. He's done very well. I like your house. I've seen the videos of your house. Very nice. And I just, I'm glad that he could join us here tonight because, someone who's a troublemaker like me, that have the establishment here is profound. So Bob, thank you for being so here. Introduce yourself. Take a minute.
Well, firstly, Thomas, thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure and honor to be here tonight. I'm Bob Knakal. I'm the chairman and CEO of BKREA, which is a real estate brokerage company. I'm a real estate broker. Last week, I sold building 2,350, about $22 billion worth of properties. And as Thomas said, I've been doing it 41 years.
And so I have been somewhat shy about expressing my views about lack of diversity in the commercial real estate industry with a lot of these brokerage firms and events. Look, I'm not going to mention names because I've moved on. But look, my panel is diverse. Look, why is it these event companies can't find black people to put on their panels? I found white people to put on my panels. God. So let me know. Okay, so anyway, and when I was being a troublemaker, Bob reached out and said, why don't we have lunch and talk? And the Pen Club, right? Yeah, I got to go to the Pen Club. I've never been to the Pen Club. I thought somebody was going to tap me on the shoulder and say, you're in the wrong place. Very nice. You people live well. Very nice. Anyway, let's walk down the aisle. Next. Here you go.
Eric Vath, I'm partner at Goldman Harris. We do land use zoning. We're a boutique firm, all 5 boroughs. But yeah, we help small and big developers alike. So that's our focus, and we help find solutions. I'm going to share some tricks here tonight, so please don't tell anyone because that's how we make our money. But yeah, there's a lot of, if you know how to work within the laws, there's a surprising amount of things you can achieve in New York. I'll tell you about a few tricks coming up here. But that way.
Good evening, Thomas. Thanks for having me here. Ronald Gold. I'm a commercial and residential real estate appraiser in the state of New York. Almost as long as Bob Knakal. This is my 40th year. I'm an expert witness in real estate valuation for the New York State Supreme Court, the U.S. District Federal Court, Eastern District, Southern District, and the U.S. Bankruptcy Court. I've represented many foreign governments in a variety of real estate transactions connected with the United Nations. I specialize in construction defects, trust and estates, matrimonial disputes, deal with buyers and sellers from the very smallest to the very largest properties here in the city of New York. My area of expertise is New York City, Nassau County, and Suffolk County. I've also done a number of appraisals throughout the Caribbean region for the New York State Supreme Court. Delighted to be here.
We've known each other like 30 years. Like I was a kid, before she was a young man, but I first met him when I was in my early 20s in Harlem, where I practiced, when I became a real estate broker, where I practiced. Great guy. I'm so glad.
Hi. Good evening. Derek Warner, Principal Attorney of the Offices of Derek Warner Esquire. I'm a real estate landlord-tenant, real estate litigation attorney. Offices principally in Brooklyn. I also, I recently moved to Lower Manhattan, by the way. Represent mostly small investors and landlords who own anywhere from 2 to 10 properties. So I'm in that space. And I got my start in title insurance, real estate transactions from that, and then moved into more litigation. But I have a combination. My practice spans that whole range, and been with Thomas in his various incarnations over the last almost close to 20 years. It must be at least 15.
Eric and I first met before he got married. He was looking for an apartment, and I showed him an apartment in Harlem. And I forgot I was renting him the apartment because I liked his talk zone, so we exchanged cards with three friends since then. And that's how long. And now he represents the fund on all our New York transactions. And I recommend he's not a paper pusher. You know, some of these corporate lawyers are just push paper. This guy is a predator. Like, he is a shark. He will protect you. If you're up against the big boys, Derek knows all the clean and dirty tricks to protect your home. And so I highly recommend him as a lawyer, as long as you're not coming after me.
Happy to be here tonight.
All right, so New York, let's. I'm going to be selfish on this, so you and I are going to be spending some time together. Bob, I was very excited about City of Yes. This was before our mayor got indicted, and I was like, wow, I have a property in the Bronx, 3129 Fenton Avenue. It's on a 50 by 100. By the way, if you want counseling, what you do is you just form a panel, and then you get like free advisory service. So I have this property, and it's on a 50 by 100 foot lot in the Bakechester area of the Bronx, and City of Yes. And I was like, oh my God, I'm going to be able to build 5 stories up, and the property is going to go through the roof and in value. And now, after the city council watered down the mayor's City of Yes because of his issues, all I got is a property that has little resemblance of the value that I was hoping on. So you saw the property, how, first tell us a little bit about City Yes and how investors can leverage these opportunities in our neighborhoods.
Yeah, absolutely. We just passed, it's the largest rewrite of our zoning code, the zoning resolution, largest rewrite since 1961. It's called City of Yes. There were 3 prongs. The most important one for our conversation is City of Yes for housing opportunity. 1,400 pages. I'm on page 1289. I hope it ends well, right? It is
not a love story.
Probably not. But what it does is, on the face of it, it's supposed to create housing. It's supposed to create a lot of it. It's supposed to create affordable housing. What it actually achieves is it relaxes a lot of the zoning regulations, which really prevented infill housing, which really presented problems for small developers in certain neighborhoods. Yes, it does largely benefit higher density neighborhoods, but there are some tricks in the smaller density neighborhoods that I think a savvy developer, with good investment could really try to find some.
I was clearly going through trauma here. Some of my investors, I was for this property. So what would be your advice on this property that just has a hut on it, 2-family? When can I tear it down and build something new?
So there are these new regulations, and you're correct that City Council did push back on some of the more beneficial attributes, and that was largely because people in Staten Island did not want additional density. I think we can speculate why, right? But the fact...
See, Matthew, you need to train me. You see, I would have said they didn't want black people in neighborhoods, but you see how he said it so much. That was good.
Staten Island is our different borough, that's for sure. By the way, I have some great stories about going to community boards in Staten Island. I do not recommend it for anyone on the panel. The fact is that there are some tricks. You've gotten a slight increase in FAR, not as much. So FAR is floor area ratio. So if I have a lot that's 50 by 100, the FAR is the multiplier that tells me how much floor area I can build. So the bigger the lot, the more floor area I can build. So if I have a 5 FAR, I can multiply 5 times my lot area, and that's my maximum floor area that I'm allowed to construct. So, by that math, the bigger the lot, the better, right? If you can assemble multiple lots side by side, you're going to get a good project out of it, right? There's also ways to transfer development rights from my neighbor. I can buy excess development rights by merging. It's called a zoning lot merger. I can buy development rights from my neighbor, and then I can use them on my lot.
My neighbor doesn't want to give up their house, but they're willing to sell me their so-called air rights. I can build higher.
That's right. Yeah. So this is a great trick. A lot of developers use it to great effect in New York City because instead of, let's face it, you see these ultra talls on lots that shouldn't have that size building. Well, it's because they bought development rights from all their neighbors. You can do that wherever. Yeah. So that's the trick in New York City. Now, what City of Yes has done, there are a couple of interesting mechanisms inside City of Yes. I can actually buy from a landmark church that's not next to me. I can buy from a landmark church across the street.
But you're telling me the next person that owns the property next door to me, I can go there and give them cash, and they'll give me some kind of right that'll let me build higher?
That's right. Yeah. So you're entering into a contract. I like to say it's kind of like a marriage because you're forever bound to them.
R1 zone, I can still do it?
Yeah. So in the lower density districts, obviously the FAR is lower, so you're not getting as much. But yeah, you can buy excess development rights from anyone around you and it could be worth an extra 5 or 10 floors. Yeah. It's a common trick in New York City, especially if you live next to someone who they don't plan on selling. It's free money to them, right? They have an extra 5,000 square feet of floor area they're sitting on, they're not using. Why not buy it, right? And you might be the only buyer who comes to them, so you might be able to set your price, essentially.
So that's nice, but Bob, how do we translate that? How's the brokerage market responding to this? I mean, that opportunity has existed for almost forever, but how has the City of Yes, energized that?
Oh, well, I'll say the City of Yes legislation is probably the first piece of legislation that addresses the real fundamental problem New York City has, and most cities have when it comes to a housing crisis, and that is that supply is constricted. What I will say is I think City of Yes has been the best piece of legislation that's passed since 1961 relative to our zoning handbook. But what I will tell you is I think that the biggest problem the city has is with our elected officials. Our politicians, and if you have an opportunity to speak to anybody that's an elected official, talk to them and try to convince them that the solution to all of our housing problems are on the supply side. Even if you believe that economics is a capitalist propaganda thing and doesn't really work, just look at the pandemic. During the pandemic, a lot of people didn't renew leases in Manhattan, moved out of Manhattan. Supply increased greatly. Vacancy increased greatly, and vacancy increasing is like supply increasing. Rents in Manhattan during the pandemic dropped by 30%.
Let me stop you there for a minute. So a lot of times you hear people say stuff like this, and it's not real. My ex-wife at the time was looking for an apartment, but the pandemic hit, and the landlords were offering these crazy deals. So she said she would jump on it. She got a rent-stabilized 3-bedroom apartment in Washington Heights. That means my son got his own bedroom. My daughters are sharing 2 rooms that are really big, about the size of my apartment. And my ex-wife has a nice big apartment where she gets to live by herself in a room. And so I'm not saying the pandemic was good. I'm saying because there was more supply dumped on the market, she got an apartment that she could not necessarily afford at only $2,500 for a 3-bedroom Marshall Place. And that rent stabilized, which means it can't increase it significantly. That is real, what you just said.
It's real. So rents during the pandemic in Manhattan dropped 30%. There has not been a housing policy that's been implemented anywhere in the United States that made rents go down by 10%. We had rents drop by 30%. So why the heck won't our politicians incentivize construction and new supply? Why? I'll tell you why. Elliot Spitzer is a friend of mine. And he told me a story when Atlantic Yards was rezoned. That's the area around Barclays Center. That rezoning was going to include 9,000 apartments, 25% of which were low-income affordable housing units. The local council person, who I won't mention by name because she's still very, very actively involved as a politician in New York, but the local council person at the time voted against the rezoning. So Elliot calls her and says, "Hey, Tish, come to my office. I got to talk to you." And says, "How could you possibly vote against this? You're going to have 9,000 new apartments in your district, 2,400 affordable units. How could you do that?" She said, "Governor, I'll tell you why. Because in my city council race, only 7,400 people voted in the last election. You're talking about bringing 25,000 people into my district that don't know me and might not vote for me."
And they're right.
That is the problem. Well, I didn't say that, you did. Okay. But the reality is that our politicians care more about getting reelected than about serving their constituents. And as long as that is endemic in what our political structure looks like, it's a big problem. Every politician will say, "We want New York to be more affordable for everybody. We want rents to come down." Well, why the heck is every single thing you do constricting supply, exerting upward pressure on rents, making it less affordable for everybody? It's a political problem. It's not a real estate problem. And if you think about it, our politicians, most of them won't even take a campaign contribution from real estate people. How could that be when real estate contributes 54% to the city's budget between real estate taxes, transfer taxes, mortgage recording taxes, other charges and fees? 54% of the money the city spends comes from real estate, and yet a lot of our elected officials won't even take a if I wanted to write them a check for a campaign contribution, they'd return it to me. That's the biggest problem in the city, is that we don't have an alignment of what really is in everybody's best interest and what our politicians are doing.
Derek, so thank you for that, those comments. And now I'm going to be the troublemaker. Often, people walk into your office, you have white clients, right? You have white clients, right? And some bad real estate person is trying to take their home, and you have to defend against them. And you see that it's neighborhoods that are gentrifying. I like community development, but some people say I like community development as opposed to gentrifying. Talk to us about the horror stories where you have to help these old ladies keep their homes from these bad predators. Now, I think everything you said was excellent, and I agreed with 90% of what you said, but the problem is a small number in our industry are exploitators, and they're evil, and they do bad things that Derek has to defend against. And because of a small number of people in any industry, doctors, lawyers, investment bankers, they get a bad rap. So Derek, talk to me about your practice in terms of how you're defending, helping Black people in Brooklyn keep their homes.
Yeah, well, I mean, to piggyback on what some of you are saying, the politicians are all over that. So there's plenty of laws trying to stop it, and that's the DA's office loves deed fraud. That's one of their favorite topics. So there's a lot of attention on being overly aggressive about getting under market property. So, and I see it actually from the investor side, because a lot of the people that I started out in real estate working with were people who were trying to buy distressed properties. So I actually see it more from even that perspective. So, there was a lot of tricks, of course, and you hear the stuff. Oh, they would offer you, like, I'm going to help you modify your mortgage that you're in trouble with. And they're really signing a contract of sale. Sometimes they're even signing a deed. They don't know it. And, and that stuff happens and happened a lot. But at this stage, I think there's so much attention on it now. And it's become such a political issue. It's hard for people to get away with a lot of that anymore. Like I said, the DA's office is all over that kind of stuff.
People are going to jail.
Yeah, and lawyers have gotten prosecuted.
And
So,
many of
yeah,
these people look like us, so let's not go on,
Yeah.
bad white man come into our community.
right.
A lot of these people, behind them is what I was like too, but the people who doing the introduction, they look like us.
Yeah, and the high prices, the price levels is what drives some of that, because investors need to, basic economics, need to buy low to create some equity so they can flip it. So they're trying to get off-market deals. So that's really what's driving all of it. Right? You go to somebody, they go to the courthouse, they can see whose property is in foreclosure. They start calling them. They start coming by the house. I can help you do this, offer cash deals, or try to, like I said, say, oh, I'll help you fight the bank, but, sign some papers with me and promise to sell it to me later. But they get locked into contracts or sometimes a deed that's being held, and then it gets recorded later. So it's a problem, especially in places like Brooklyn, because the prices have skyrocketed to such a degree that, in order to continue to play in this market, they really have to find ways to come in way below market.
Now, Ron, talk to me about, what you've seen in regard to the issues on title and deeds that you left that you have to testify. When they're bringing you in, it's not a pretty story.
No, but the great thing about my business is that there is always a paper trail. And there's always a lot of evidence to base opinions of value on. One of my specialties is diminution of value due to structural defects in the property. So that could be neighboring construction projects. It could be.
Like if somebody is fixing their property next door, they damage my wall.
That's exactly right. And fortunately, I have access to structural engineers and all kinds of experts that will assist me in terms of estimating diminution of value. I'd like to bring up something that hasn't been discussed this evening. I'd like to bring up the shadow inventory of warehoused apartments throughout Manhattan, primarily north of 96th Street. This is a big problem. Not too many people talk about it. The brokerage community and the development community are keeping these markets warehoused and off the market because they're desperately afraid of federal Section 8 housing vouchers. And we're now going to have, as of today, with Kathy Hochul, $50 million for state housing vouchers. And that may go up to $100 or maybe even $200 million. That's a big part of the tragedy of the secret of warehousing of apartments that are available, that are, as to quote Bob Knakal, that are affecting the extremely high rental market levels in the city of New York. Again, this is 96th Street North. It's a sad situation. It exists. Unfortunately, it is outside the law, and it's a big question as how it's going to be resolved in the near and distant future.
Remaining vacant, or
Properties that are remaining vacant, correct. Mostly rental properties.
So I want to push back on, you're the man to do it.
Yeah, Ron, I love you. I got to disagree with you on this one. Let's go back to 1978. Yankees, Dodgers playing in the World Series. Reggie Jackson's hitting all those home runs.
I still have a baseball card from Reggie Jackson.
There you go. There you go. And the Goodyear blimp is above Yankee Stadium, pans out, There are 6 fires going on within 3 blocks of Yankee Stadium. Why? And Howard Cosell, the announcer, famously says, "The Bronx is burning." Well, why was the Bronx burning? The Bronx was burning because back then it made more sense to burn your building down and collect the insurance money than to invest in the housing stock. So what did the private sector do? Or what did the politicians do? They implemented 2 programs that incentivized the private sector to invest in housing instead of burning their buildings down. What did they created? The Major Capital Improvement Program for building-wide improvements, new roof, new boiler, new windows, new plumbing, new electric, and the Individual Apartment Improvement Program, the IAI, where you did a new kitchen, a new bathroom, new flooring, new ceiling. And what did that do? That incentivized the private sector to invest in the housing stock. In 1978, the dilapidation rate in New York City was 14%, meaning 14% of the apartments were in such bad condition they were deemed uninhabitable. These 2 programs incentivized the private sector to dump tens of billions of dollars into the housing stock, such that in 2019, that 14% dilapidation rate fell to 0.04%. Better quality of life, better living conditions, better everything for people. And the knucklehead politicians, what did they do in HSTPA in June of 2019? They marginalized both of those programs, creating a disincentive to invest in those houses. So why is there so much vacancy? And it's estimated there are 60 to 80,000 vacant apartments, because when a rent-stabilized apartment becomes vacant today, the landlord nails it shut. Because when you have an apartment that was renting for $750 a month, that's worth $4,000 a month on the open market, and you're only allowed to charge $758 a month, who the hell's going to rent it for $758 a month when it's worth $4,000? 60 to 80,000 vacant apartments, again, constricting supply.
So the reason this is critical is because let's stop that moment. So they were getting $750. They didn't really want the $750. They wanted the market amount, but at least they were getting $750. Now they're only getting whatever, an extra $50 or less. But the city won't legally allow them to re-rent it because they have to fix it up. So they can't, even if they wanted to accept that lower rent, the same rent they were getting, the tenant by law is entitled to improvements. So why would I spend several $1,000s, almost $50,000 on a new bathroom, new kitchen, to only get an extra $25 to $50 when me and the tenant both agree we won't make any improvements, but he can take me to court and force that on me. So they would rather leave the apartments vacant. Now, you're correct.
So Bob, why are you disagreeing? What are you disagreeing with?
Well, you said that because those owners don't want to take Section 8 tenants. I think that the hypocrisy is that the politicians believe that controlling what a private owner can do with their property or confiscating private property is a better way to get votes than to actually create more supply. I've had lunch with the governor. I've had lunch with the mayor. And I said, all you have to do is reinstate the MCI and the IAI programs the way they were. You'd have 60 to 80,000 apartments under gut renovation within 2 weeks. Within 2 weeks, how much flooring are you going to sell? How much sheetrock? How many sinks, bathtubs, toilets, refrigerators, stoves? How many jobs are you going to create? How much revenue are you going to generate from taxes? How economically stimulative would that be? This is a no-brainer from my perspective.
Right. And take the other side. The problem that happens, so everything you said is good and correct. Then what happens is the predators look at, and that's what, Derek, you brought up, the predators then look at that economic opportunity. So instead of doing the first run of apartments that need help, they're thinking almost like crackheads, we need more supply. And so the way you get more supply is push out Ms. Johnson out of her apartment. And those people are the reasons why a lot of politicians have pushed back. It's that front page story of those greedy landlords that are pushing out tenants. They hurt everybody in this industry.
And I'll address that too. This is another piece of hypocrisy, right? If you're a tenant in an affordable component of like an 80-20 building, if you're in the 20% affordable component, you have to prove that you deserve to be in there. I believe the overwhelming majority of real estate owners don't believe that grandma should be thrown out on the street. But I've had clients who make millions of dollars a year that are rent stabilized. They should not be getting the protection of a rent stabilized apartment. Every rent stabilized tenant should prove that they deserve protection. Then they don't have to worry about tenant harassment, because why would an owner start litigation against a tenant when they know they're certified as a rent stabilized tenant? You'd eliminate harassment very, very significantly. You'd get rid of the people who make hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars a year that are still in a rent regulated apartment, which leads to a misallocation of our housing stock. It's a system that the advocates for tenants say, oh, we don't want you to know how much these people are making. I believe there's an easy solution for this that would be better for everybody, better for the rent stabilized apartments, better for the industry. You won't have predator landlords trying to kick people out if they're certified as a rent stabilized tenant, deserving rent stabilized protection. There has to be a better way to do this.
You know, I could continue this fight, but you go, young lady.
Thomas, can I say something?
Yes, I'll let you.
You know, we have a black New York State Senate Majority Leader, and we have a black New York State Assembly Leader. Now, how are you going to do that, Bob? How's that going to happen? How are you going to dismantle the housing law of 2019? Tell me how you're going to do that. Kathy Hochul is worrying about getting reelected. How are you going to do that?
So I want to save that back and forth, but I will say he brings up a good point, but it's not going to happen because as someone who lives in a rent stabilized apartment, if my city councilman did anything to use means test for my having that benefit, I would not vote for him. And so I think we were in a classroom at a university. I agree 100% with the economic, the way you laid out that economic plan makes 100% the math, pencils, perfect. Now, as someone who's interested in the needs of his family, there's no way I'm giving up my stabilized apartment, and I will vote out any politician that gets in the way of that. Yeah, now, but I want to ask you this question about, because we were talking about these residential. The values of these properties affect with regard to the mortgages that people can get. How do you get around these issues when you see such challenges in the market? How can you help clients get the mortgage they need to protect them so that they don't end up having to rent an apartment?
Well, they make sure that they can qualify. One, hello. Well, they have to know what they qualify before they even get out there. So I make sure I look at everything up front. And on a commercial side, it's different because it's based on the rental income. So you have two different areas. You have the residential side and you have the commercial side. Residential, we do have properties that you can purchase without showing your income. We have stated income loans as well. I do both. So on the commercial side, you have a whole nother area where the value is really, how could I say it? I just want to say that the rental income, I'm going to go back to that. The rental income far exceeds your mortgage payment. So that's where your cap rate is, and that's where you qualify.
See, that's the problem I have. Yes, because, and I'm going to try to say.
Did you have a problem with that?
Yeah, I'm say this politically correct. Those communities are single family homes. They don't want you to be able to use a second unit to qualify for a mortgage, because then that allow immigrants and allow Black folks into the neighborhoods. When you have the house, your income must be the primary source for qualifying. That's hard for Black folks and immigrants, because particularly immigrants, if they work as a family, so you'll have 3 or 4 jobs and they're all contributing to the pool. And then the second unit that can generate real income that you as a bank can use to get the house. But if you keep it as a single family, then they won't be able to get the benefit of that, and they can't qualify just on their individual home.
Well, what I'm seeing now, because right now, the average first-time home buyer is priced out in New Jersey and New York. So we're pooling money together. You're having the family, 2 or 3 people apply for a one-family mortgage. You have to.
So I want to top off on the city. I want to top off on the city of Yes, and then I want to end with Bob. Do you? Well, you guys would know. The last change was like 50 years ago, right? 50 years, 1961. Do you believe that this is going to be amended and improved, or you believe this is all we're getting for the next 50 years?
Listen, the zoning resolution needs to be improved continuously because it's real people and developers who learn if it works or if it doesn't work. Like we're already learning, and Bob can get into this, that the 485X, which is the tax abatement program that's supposed to accompany and supplement City of Yes, it's got problems. It needs to be fixed. So I expect City of Yes to be fine-tuned over the years. I don't think it's going to produce the amount of affordable housing that people are expecting. I think it'll produce more housing, but I don't think we're going to get to the affordable housing that we need in the city.
Very good. And before we're going to start Ghana, the panel on Ghana in a few moments, but I'll let you go and then Bob get the last one.
The problem with affordable housing, and my developer said this, they get more incentives to create rental properties. HUD gives them money, the state gives them money. So there's no real incentive for them to build for purchase.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting point about 485X. The fact is that building and construction costs in the city are so expensive, you have to have a tax abatement program. Again, I don't mean to be spending the whole night bashing our politicians, but politicians make up the rules. People have to play by the rules. If the rules don't make any sense, nobody's going to play the game. This 485X is the most misguided, useless piece of legislation that's ever been enacted. Do you realize that in certain areas like Manhattan, south of 96th Street, if you build over 99 apartments, you pay a minimum wage of $72.45 an hour. Minimum wage. So when you're driving down Manhattan, south of 96th Street, and you see the guy sitting in the lawn chair in the street with the stop sign, that guy's making $72.45 an hour. You can't do that.
That includes benefits, right?
That does not include benefits. That's a base wage. So you can't afford to make these payments. So since 485X was created, there have been 22 building permits approved. All of them are for 99 units or less. We're not getting the construction that we need. We need the new supply. We need more housing. And if people can't get it through their head, we need new supply, do the right thing, forget about getting reelected and do what's in the best interest of the city and everybody that lives in the city. If you live in the city and you pay too much rent, just blame your politicians, blame your local assembly person, your local council person, your mayor, your governor, your assembly person, your senator. It's their fault.
No, it's not.
It is their fault.
It's not their fault. It's the voter like me who says, if you touch my stabilized housing, I will vote you out.
Well, Thomas, that's an issue because you could fundamentally disagree on every other issue with that politician, but if they'll protect your stabilized apartment, you'll vote for them. And that's the problem. But that's why what will happen, and Ron, you bring up a great point. How is this going to change? Well, you know what? It's too early to change. But wait 10 years from now, when the condition of this housing, when our dilapidation rate gets back to 14%, because nobody has incentive to invest $1 in the housing stock, and people say to their local council, hey, my building's falling apart. What the heck is happening? You say, oh, I'm sorry. I made the rules such that nobody's going to invest in your building because I figured by the time the building really gets crappy, I'm going to be out of office. So what do I care? That's the problem. That's the problem. We need to create incentives to people to invest in the housing stock, create more housing, better living conditions for people. The Wharton School has done a study. MIT has done a study. In the absence of rent regulation, average rents go down. Rent controls, price controls create a constriction of supply and exerts upward pressure on what is available. And it's proven.
They keep people like me in their neighborhoods that they want to be in. This is not about the logic of economics. I agree with your logic of economics. This is about me being selfish and wanted to stay in my neighborhood and don't tell me I have to pay more or I'll vote you out of office. It's simple for me.
Well, and if you went through a process of qualifying and getting the stamp of saying, hey, I'm a deserving rent stabilized tenant, nobody would bother you, but build other stuff. You know what was interesting?
No, I deserve it because I want it.
Okay. We'll agree to disagree. But what I will also say is the city has an unbelievable ability to solve our housing problem. During the pandemic, I walked every street of Manhattan, south of 96th on the east side, south of 110 on the west side, just in Manhattan.
What, you from home?
Not yet. But south of 96th Street, New York City owns 196 acres of land. 196 acres of land on which public housing sits. There's 30 million feet of public housing buildings on that land. There's 15 million feet of air rights sitting on this very underzoned land. If they took the floor area ratio on this land from what it is to just 10, which is good but not great, you'd have 60 million feet of air rights. That's $24 billion worth of value. And you have lot coverage in the private sector housing. Lot coverage is 70 or 80%. Public housing lot coverage is about 12%.
See, this is the problem with your logic. You're speaking with logic. Why would I, as a assemblyman or a city councilman, let you build affordable housing on or market rate housing that get all these white voters come in and vote me out of office when I have these nice poor black people who will keep voting me in office and things won't change and I'll have my job until I retire. Buildings will fall apart, but I will be out of office by then. And you want to bring in these white middle class people into black neighborhoods, and then I won't get reelected.
Well, I don't have an answer for that one. But I will tell you, look at what's happening. You could build new housing on these massive parking lots or the massive open space on public housing and tell people, look, you're in a really crappy building. You have rats, your ceiling's falling down on you. You need to heat your apartment with your oven during the winter. I'm going to give you the same square footage at the same rent. You're going to just move 87 feet to the new building right on your property. And then we're going to knock your old buildings down because no matter how much money you put into these existing NYCHA buildings, you're never going to fix them up. They're terrible. And so move into new building. We're housing about 10% of the people we could house on our public land. You could house a lot more people. Economically, it would be better living conditions. I mean, I could talk about this forever. But look, Related and Essence Development is doing this in Chelsea. They're going to knock down 4 buildings, build all new stuff. It's a great template. If I was mayor, and I'm not running for mayor, I'm not want to get into politics, I would get 50 developers to go into, and this is 196 acres in the most prime part of Manhattan. Could you imagine how much it is if you took into consideration northern Manhattan and the Bronx and Brooklyn and Queens? I would hire 50 developers to go in, build all new buildings, knock all this old stuff down that you'll never be able to make habitable in a really good way again. And within 10 years, you'd have millions of new apartments that would drive rents way down and make better living conditions for everybody. We have to do this. This is an unbelievable resource the city has that is being completely misallocated and underutilized.
Before we close this panel, I want to say that, Bob, there you go with the same mistake with logic. But here's the good news. The good news, he said 10 years. The good news is probably maybe 30 when literally the buildings are falling down. That's when the politicians will have no choice but to do the plan you just said. And if the mayor is smart, and, I didn't expect you to say it this way, but I would have said these 50 developers, an overwhelming number of them Black and Hispanic, this was a great opportunity and for people from the community to be a part of the rebuilding of their community. You got to frame it like a politician, Anyway, let's give everybody a round of applause.